And you are just in time for Richard Mwanja exclusive. I am Richard Mwanja. Welcome to the conversation. It is such a distinct privilege to have your company with us on this show that is the only point of call on matters political and governance analysis in Kenya and across the region. But before we get into the nitty-gritties of the day's conversation, how about I introduce to you the gentleman who's gonna help me unpack the day's conversation. Is none other than Trans Nzoia's biggest export, certainly after the late Vice President Wamalwa Kijana, and he's also served this country as a minister at some point. I'm talking about none other than Honorable Kipruto Arap Kirwa.
Yeah.
How are you doing today, sir?
Very well, I thank God.
Our main conversation for the day is, and I'm going to pose this question to you, in whose hands is Azimio Save, the official opposition coalition in this country? But before you answer that question, the latest development is that of Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka literally imploring Raila Odinga to step down and officially hand over the baton to him as the new opposition leader in this country. Do you find wisdom behind Kalonzo's request?
Well, I don't know whether to assign a measure of wisdom or to say straight that for me Azimio is dead. And the best thing as political players is to spend more time thinking of a new outfit and a new strategy to give Kenyans hope that there is alternative voice to the government of the day. Literally, Raila has moved into government. You cannot donate 5 cabinet ministers and you are also a candidate for the government of the day and you say you are not in government. In fact, if Raila had negotiated well for the opposition, he would have told the president, allow my members of parliament to go back, allow members of parliament that you have already taken, like from UDM, from Jubilee, to feel free and form their outfit called Azimio and allows Azimio to have the majority in the House. And therefore, instead of Junet Mohammed celebrating being minority, he should have celebrated being majority. Because it doesn't have to be that the president's party must be the majority. Majority comprises members of the National Assembly from the coalition that was formed prior to elections. But of course, immediately after elections, the president emasculated the opposition. And if Raila was still believing in the opposition, he should have allowed the president to release the hostages as one part of the negotiation to form this broad-based government. I don't mind him donating the members of the opposition or of his party, because basically they were ODM members. But he should have negotiated for the sake of democracy in Africa, democracy in Kenya. He should have told the president, I have only one request. Release the hostages that you've taken hostage from the alternative political arrangement. Today, Kimani Ichung'wah would be the leader of minority. And Junet Mohammed would be the leader of majority in the House. But he didn't negotiate for that, which means it was not about us. It was about his candidature to AU and their approach more with President Ruto. That's the only thing that we can take from that. Yeah.
You're mentioning about emasculation of our democracy as a country after a section of Azimio joined government. And I'm curious to understand, when you see Kimani Ichung'wah, majority leader in the National Assembly, sing so much praises towards Raila Odinga, and on the other side, Junet Mohammed literally praising President William Ruto during the Nyanza tour, and several other quarters whom many could not believe they will praise the opposite fractions. Would you say that probably we are seeing sycophancy being the biggest cheerleader to compromise in our democracy?
Well, I still believe in two things, that democracy and political system in Africa does not lie in the political parties. It is the individual who designs a democracy in Africa. And therefore, we still run the risk of us being harassed by lack of democracy, lack of governance, lack of effective management of resources, and the lack of allowing the people to make decisions. Because why? It's because we have crafted our democracy around an individual. And even political parties are vessels for individuals to decide what to do. It is Raila Odinga and William Ruto who decided about that partnership of theirs, totally forgetting the partners that fought with him in the last general election. That is a sign that it was not about the people. It was about the two leaders, Ruto looking for peace internally and Raila looking for a job abroad.
So in the architecture of those political parties and coalitions, the people's interest never took a front row seat.
And they will never. Let's not pretend, they will never. Political coalitions is around political, is not around political institutions. It's about communities and individuals. William Ruto calls Raila, they meet, they decide, the rest is history. Raila Odinga calls Uhuru, they agree, the handshake, which Ruto was saying he will never have it. Now he has had a handshake in a roundabout way. In fact, Raila never donated anybody to Uhuru's government during the handshake. But this time, he has donated 5 cabinet ministers. And I don't know what else he's going to donate from ODM or from whatever coalition or arrangement that he has. That's what is worrying me. Democracy in Africa is not about people. Democracy in Africa is not about the rest of us. It's about the leaders and their tribes. Yep.
You're mentioning about the need for Kenyans to get back their sovereign voice just so to improve their democracy. And recently we saw Gen Z advance grace of time for President Ruto to redeem himself and at least meet their grievances midway. This far, are you convinced that in a bid to uphold democracy and listen to the people more, has the president failed to redeem himself when it comes to Gen Z demands and just hearing the sovereign voice of the people?
What he has done, he has given a temporary solution to a permanent issue. What he has done, he has answered the wrong question. The question Gen Zs were asking was about inclusivity. It was about moral probity. It was about governance. It was about the need for us to adhere to the constitutional order. But he has given a political answer. That is where we are today. Nothing can be resolved by answering the wrong question. You know, you are a student of economics. If you are asked about the 3 factors that affect production, you cannot talk about things that affect harvesting. They will be, well, you will be talking the right thing, but about you are not answering the question you are asked. So that's the problem. He has not answered the real question. He has given temporary solution to a long-term problem, because it's not about this regime. When you talk about corruption, corruption has been here before. We are likely to see it again. When you talk about lack of inclusivity, they have amplified by the other day getting members of KRA, interns, was it interns or recruits?
Revenue assistants.
Assistants from 2 communities. It is the other day that we saw gangster to gangster arrangement of oil. It's the other day that we saw blackout, and that blackout was riddled with some kind of mysterious issues. Why is it that in the morning, when it was clear that you cannot use darkness to do anything, the power came back?
A country can stoop that low?
Yes. When it is, you know, the danger that we've done as Kenya is to elect businessmen and call them politicians. They will steal. They are merchants, not even businessmen. Businessmen are more decent. They are merchants. They can sell anything, even the coffin of their mother.
So having the president who is a Christian and boldly speaks about it doesn't help with the situation?
Christianity is about your soul. So, and you can make a lot of pronouncements. How many prophets will go to hell? Many.
Really?
Yeah.
We could be having prophets of Baal here in Kenya?
Oh, you will be shocked. What happened in the Bible history still happens today and will happen tomorrow.
Even under the watch of truthful men like the second in command, Rigathi Gachagua?
Well, it speaks the truth, but at times he misadvises himself. He does a lot of misadventures, but you see, anyway, it's okay. Yeah, of course, he had said Raila would not get to State House. Where was he when Raila got to State House?
Talking of which, you've mentioned the second in command, DP Rigathi Gachagua. During the Nyanza tour, President Ruto was there. He was there as well. Many Azimio associates were there.
Yeah.
And you could see from a third eye many were hitting hard, going bare knuckles on DP Rigathi Gachagua in the full glare of the president. Would you say that still there are people out here baying for the political blood of Rigathi Gachagua, even at a time when his own boss is not going after him publicly?
Well, I'm happy you've used the last word, publicly. I don't know whether there is still some kind of partnership between Rigathi Gachagua and the president. Perhaps they are tolerating each other. That is my take.
In Indoya machozi already?
In Indoa, it may break, it may continue for the sake of children, but I'm not sure that this is a partnership that we are going to sustain. And the question I would ask is that what do we do with the position of second in command? It has not been sitting pretty for many of them that we've had. I think we've had about 15 of them now. It has not been sitting pretty. Starting with the first one, Mzee Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, all the way to Saitoti, all the way to Kibaki, all the way to the current president with his boss Uhuru Kenyatta. So I think there must be something that we must rethink and to see how do we, now that we know we are dealing with politics of election, you don't have to die for your deputy to take over. How are we going to deal with it? So that if I'm your deputy or you are my deputy, after the period of 10 years, if we work together, I should step aside for 5 years, then try my hand in politics again. I don't know. Or once you become a deputy president, that becomes your position, unless the guy in office dies.
Still on His Excellency Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, when it comes to his unifying efforts in Mount Kenya block, there are those who are reading from different scripts, but more particularly Kimani Ichung'wah. And we've seen people like Mwangi Kiunjuri also believing that there is nothing like unity efforts in his clarion call for the mountain to be one piece. It is just about him trying to capitalize on that fodder to make himself a monster when it comes to 27 politics. Would you say that Kimani Ichung'wah could have some iota of truth in his sentiments about Rigathi's appeal for unity in Mount Kenya?
I think there are two issues. If that unity was to take place in Mount Kenya, which I am not from Mount Kenya, but I suspect to a large extent, today Rigathi Gachagua is a tower above the rest. And they fear that that unity will squeeze them out of political relevance. The second issue, possibly somebody is stoking the fire from far, that make sure that you destabilize this person, because this unity is dangerous. 47% of the votes that were garnered by UDA belong to the mountain, and therefore losing 47% without a clear demonstration on how do you recoup what you lose in the mountain, perhaps somebody may be careful to see that you don't lose the entire block. You can remain with some semblance of presence in the mountain so that it can become a top-up for the new adventures in Nyanza, in Western, and the rest of the Raila backyard. Perhaps that could explain. Because you see, Mount Kenya is like Kenya in Africa. Mount Kenya is a big brother. When they cough, we catch a cold. And you cannot afford to ignore it. If Rigathi was to be in the ballot, my own prediction is that we'll go for round 2. Nobody will get 51%. If Rigathi is in the ballot. And if I was to recommend for him, let him prepare to go to the ballot or support somebody else. Otherwise, these rapprochement, I was seeing them with the president, seated like 2 meters away in an open field, perhaps. I don't know whether that was State House or one of the farms belonging to the president. And you could see the body language. You know, I've told you.
It was off?
I've done industrial psychology. The body language was off. So I would rather he prepares himself. If he forgets, he should watch this clip 3 years down the road. He'll say Kiro was wrong or Kiro was right.
I shall archive this one for that day.
Sawa.
Lastly, on this conversation, when it comes to now other core principles in Azimio, more particularly Martha Karua and talk of Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, they have said in the architecture of their next coalition outfit or political outfit, the handwriting of former President Uhuru Kenyatta is gonna be bold enough in the architecture of their next move. Would you then say that that is a wise move from Jeremiah Kioni and Martha Karua to literally borrow much from Uhuru Kenyatta in their next move?
Well, I just pray they are also genuine, so that if Uhuru Kenyatta has told them, support Richard Mwenja, they will support you, because that's a possibility. Because today, apart from Rigathi Gachagua, who is the deputy president, Uhuru Kenyatta is the shoulder above everybody else who comes from the region. Now, the respect that was taken away thanks to the onslaught by his own deputy has come back, and it seems to have come back in arrears.
Despite his pin drop silence over time.
In fact, the quieter he is, the more he becomes like a myth.
More lethal and all that.
More lethal. Yeah, President Uhuru Kenyatta is a giant today.
Does that now inform why Kalonzo Musyoka and Raila Odinga are also trying to associate themselves with Uhuru Kenyatta in their recent developments and decisions in the political arena?
Raila needs Uhuru for Africa, AU job. Kalonzo needs Uhuru for local politics. And William Ruto will not want to hear that. But the truth of the matter, if Uhuru Kenyatta was to support Kalonzo, Kalonzo will be our next president.
It will be a walkover for Kalonzo?
Indeed, it depends on how he receives it. You know, also goodwill, if you don't consolidate, you can squander it. But if Kalonzo prepares himself and Uhuru says, Kalonzo, Tosha, that's a ticket that you can take to the bank.
But you applaud the move from Jeremiah Kioni and Martha Karua to borrow wisdom from Uhuru
yes,
Kenyatta.
I appreciate. And in future, even when President Ruto retires, we must also give him space. Because you see, the worst thing about Kenya is that we don't seem to get some wisdom from somebody who has occupied the same office. I would expect Minister for Agriculture today to talk to me. The mistakes I made, I will tell him, this is where you can make mistakes, so that he can use his wisdom and leadership acumen to correct. They say, from the mistakes of others, wise men correct their own. So, any former president is a useful tool, is a useful quantity in terms of providing wisdom. You cannot occupy that office for 10 years and somebody does not expect you to know something. Yeah, there is always something to know, to learn.
So we are safe to say anyone underrating the Kenyatta's family, or at least, to be specific, Uhuru Kenyatta is doing so at their own peril. When it comes to
they are taking a
and
big
regional
risk.
politics.
They are taking a big risk, which unless they are sure exactly how they will recoup the goodwill from elsewhere, they are running a political game that is likely to be visited by disaster come the next general election.
And would you advise the former President Uhuru Kenyatta to continue maintaining his cool even when people are going bare knuckles on him, as he has done over the last few years?
Well, at times they say silence is golden. So I would advise him, he does not have to say anything. Let them run around him, cajoling him, almost hero-worshipping him. I think it's a nice game. Because in these political circles, it's good to hear what others are saying before you make your statement.
There you have it. How about now we cross over to this insightful segment that is Heroes Corner with Honorable Kipruto Arap Kirwa. Today, Minister, on this particular segment, who graces our edition today?
Well, today is the African man.
Africa. The other day it was Mother Africa, Mother of Africa.
Mother of Africa.
Today it is?
The African man.
The African man,
The man who in the struggle for independence spent a lot of time, lost his life. But when the struggle was over, they never benefited from the fruits of independence. The man who went to the Second World War, all the way to Abyssinia, to Burma, and to many places. And when they came back, the Mzungus who were with them, they were given parcels of land. And they were told to do what they were calling blue quota system, where you have to sign that you will be under the Mzungu as a laborer or somebody providing certain services. That African man continued struggling to plant coffee, starting in the independent schools, and also starting independent churches for the purpose of occupying their true position in Africa. When the Mzungu left, they were told to buy parcels of land from the same Mzungu. And when they say this land was ours before, they say the Mzungu has done some development, and therefore you are not buying the land, you are buying the development that is on that land that used to be yours. That African man believed the first president of Kenya, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, and that is how they got 1 million acres all the way from Trans Nzoia to Nyahururu to Laikipia, where the Mzungu occupied, and we paid for the land that was ours because the Mzungu ostensibly developed. That African man, when the new leaders in independence came to town, they thought they had changed everything for them, but it didn't benefit. They continued to suffer. When Mzee Kenyatta died, President Moi took over, and they said, okay, everything has come. We are going to have a better government, a government which believes in democracy. They never saw that democracy. Instead, many of them were taken to jail, some of them were killed, and many of them still remain in the same positions they had. The Mzungu that had left had gotten another black Mzungu who took over the resources of the nation.
Neo-colonialist?
Neo-colonialists at best were the people who were visiting the mayhem. They destroyed them.
What?
The African man fought for 20 years for a new constitution. In 2002, they had a new president who, though brought democracy to Kenya in a bigger volume, still the African man was not in the center of everything that was happening.
He was still under shackles?
He was under shackles from the leadership from various regions. Some from Nyanza believed in Raila, from Rift Valley believed in William Ruto, from Central Kenya still believed in Uhuru, and midway they got frustrated and they left Uhuru alone. But today they have gone back to Uhuru. When William Ruto took the government, they thought now from the bottom they were going to change their lives. They didn't realize that life was going to be complicated from the bottom. That African man is still struggling to make every penny for them to take their children to school. That African man is still worried about the next government. When they are selling the airport, they are selling everything that belongs to this country. And yet, they were told their lives were going to change. The African man was born 1940, is still alive and will continue to be alive. And the only thing is that he is going to replenish his hope from the future generation. And the GNC seems to have recognized that man.
So that African man is still living a lie to this day?
He's still living a life, but very frustrated. Anytime he goes to Mosbridge, he sees vehicles passing, young men with new vehicles, whose background we don't know. They didn't go to school, but they have degrees. They did not go to school. They didn't have a job, but they are rich. That man is still suffering.
So this African man is the biggest threat to the hope of an African child?
It is the biggest threat because they have nothing to hand over to this African child.
Wow, there you have it. So disappointing of the African man. That particular point by Honorable Kipchumba Arap Kirwa takes us to the entire wrap of the day's conversation. From our main subject to Heroes Corner with Kipchumba Arap Kirwa, we say asante sana, Minister, for your insights.
Yep.
Today, you've made us get so emotional. We never imagined that we are still in those shackles 60 years later after independence.
Yeah.
You just opened our eyes to the realities of the day.
Thank you.
Well, asante sana. How about to keep this conversation going on beyond here? I'm at Mwenja Richard on X and on Twitter. Also find Mheshimiwa on other social media platforms and also watch him on other mainstream television channels in this country. There's so much wisdom that you can tap from him. Until we meet next time, do enjoy the rest of your day and don't be that African man, don't be that Mother Africa who disappoints the children of Africa.